Lawyers who put together wills. What is the craziest / oddest thing someone wanted to put in this? When my great aunt, whom I barely had any relationship with, died, I discovered that in her will, she left me a taxidermied giant silk moth that she had hanging on her wall. Evidently someone told her about my love for bugs. I still have it, and it's one of the coolest things in my collection of odd knickknacks. She left my cousin a Furby. My grandfather passed a few hours ago, but my grandmother came to me after with a navy blue tie featuring pink elephants. Ridiculous looking, but she said that he wore it to intimidate people in business, as someone willing to wear such a ridiculous tie doesn't care about what people think. That scares people. So he wanted me to have it, so I could do the same. A good clause is always 4 reasons known to them. Witches will speak for you've gone and fucked up, asshole. I don't forgive you. In my own will, I've left my father the contents of my kitchen trash can at the time of my passing, for reasons known to him. Here's one from one of my dad's law partners. He had a lady come in with an itemized list of books and wanted her will to contain all of the books and who will get what, based on her choosing. So basically she decides who gets what specific book instead of letting her beneficiaries decide. The truly astonishing thing is how many books and how specific they get. According to dad's law partner, her list is at about 2,000 books, to be divided among about 30 people. She is apparently very specific and comes back at least once a year to add all the new books she's gotten. I'm the executor of my grandmother's will. I also get the house and everything in it, and a share of life insurance that's split 3 ways between myself, sister, and mom. My mom has always said that all my dad, my grandmother's son-in-law, would like to have is some table. Well, in the will there's like a whole paragraph that states how my dad gets nothing. He doesn't lay a finger on anything in the house or any money. How my dad is basically worthless and deserves nothing, and how he was a crap dad, and that she begrudgingly has my mom in the will. Thanks grandma, I'd appreciate the awkwardness. My great grandmother left most of her money to a local donkey sanctuary. Lady wanted her small dog to be buried with her if the dog happened to be alive. When the lady passed, she wanted the dog put down and then join her. Not a lawyer, but my grandpa put in his will a chocolate bar for every one of his grandkids. Well, I have like 12 cousins and very difficult to track down where a couple of them went. All this estates and money he had in will was at a standstill for months because they couldn't find my couple cousins. Had to show court we put in effort to hire someone to track them down, etc. The lawyer that was helping execute the will was blown away that this lawyer allowed this and why he wouldn't highly suggest not to do it. But I'm not complaining cause I got a Toblerone out of the deal. This one isn't necessarily crazy, just an interesting glimpse into the mind of a kind old woman in her 90s. My aunt and uncle, both were more like parents and incredibly beautiful people, passed away within a few weeks of one another. When my uncle became ill, the aunt tried to work on a will with her long-term lawyer, but she was kinda just old and out of it. Her main concern the entire time was small knickknacks like a jar of pennies she wanted a distant cousin to have, or a youth jacket from the 70s she bequeathed to a sister-in-law. It was quite touching how much time she spent carefully considering each item and who would get it. Most of the items we used and didn't even really hold any sentimental value. She just wanted them to go to good homes. When she passed away, everyone knew exactly who was getting each odd item. The real kicker is when the lawyer told the primary beneficiaries that she never got around to the bigger assets and all that jazz. She basically told the lawyer, pay for our funeral and anything we owe, and then family members X, Y, and Z can figure out the rest. It ended up being millions in homes, lakefront property, jewelry, antique firearms, vehicles, life insurance policies, stocks, bonds, gold coins, etc. etc. Luckily, the family is very close and everything went off without a hitch. They were amazing people who wanted to keep family items in the family. They just didn't put that much weight on their incredible wealth. They also hid their wealth amazingly. We all knew that they were very comfortable, but no one had any idea they were deep into 8-figure assets. It was just funny to see a random niece get a set of plastic cups, worn dance shoes, and a check for $125,000. No, ma'am. In order to bequeath something, you actually have to own it. I once wrote a will for a guy who thought he could get away from giving his ex-wife half his assets by putting them in a will for his kids. Doesn't work like that, buddy boy. My grandmother's will stated that my father had to outlive her by a certain amount of time. I honestly don't remember exactly how long. I was 15. My father died less than a month after she did, so instead of things going to my father, the next step was the estate being divided between me, my sister, and 2 cousins. It was so bizarre. One interesting case in inheritance law that I came across was the one of a super rich owner of a private bank who left his shares to his sons under the condition and restraint that they will act as managers of the private bank, but with a personal liability concerning the bank's debt. So what he did was giving them the money and commit them to lifelong work in the bank while putting their own assets at risk. So when one of the sons decided to sell his shares because he was old and sick, the courts had to decide whether he gets any money from the will. The condition was not fulfilled anymore as he gave up the manager position. One other son wanted to sell his shares. Of course that would not have been allowed under the condition either. My grandfather left me $1,000. He had dementia and confused my dad, ripping him off with me. He left the rest of the family between $100,000 and a few million each. They all said they felt horrible because they knew the details, but not horrible enough to give up any of their share. The way I see it is it was never my money to begin with, so it's not a loss. I'm just glad my sister got 100,000. She needed it more than any of the others. My own grandmother specified which of the children and grandchildren should get which of the family recipes, and somehow felt the need to include commentary about why certain decisions were made. One recipe was this Prohibition-era recipe for beer which I knew my uncle, also a home brewer, wanted, but she left it to me, with the comment that I know you wanted it, Teddy, but she has the second best penmanship of the girls, and will make you a copy. And then like 8 pages later, in among the specific descriptions of her vast collection of romance novels, really, was a line, and, specific Jude Devereaux's title, to Spide, who will please subtract about half the hops, before she copies the beer recipe for her Uncle Teddy, so that any of us can drink it. Our John had his IPA last summer and just about died. Uncle John just about burst into tears laughing, and Uncle Teddy had long since left the room, because he has no fucks whatsoever to give about romance novels. Uncle John, of course, was still in the room, because there was also still Youngling. And no, I have no idea how she got this will done. My guess is she wrote it herself, and the law students who come to her independent living building signed off on it. It was elaborate, that's for sure. Total value of the estate was well under $8,000, so it was mostly a funny last letter from grandma. Help drive a dear elderly friend of mine to his appointments to have his will redone after his wife died. He was a member of a VFW that was very badly mismanaged, to the point they were coming to him to bail them out of debt for thousands every other month. At the same time this was happening, the commander of that VFW had his wife begging to borrow money for their personal account as well. He tried to have it put in his will that while he had planned on leaving the majority of his money to the VFW, he could not in good faith leave the money, knowing it would be so badly mismanaged and probably used to offset the addictions of people in charge. Attorney would not allow that, but he did agree to hold a letter with the man's explanation for after his death. I'm assuming the attorney did send it, because I know the commander and his awful wife have been stirring up trouble with the man's family, trying to have his will contested. When my great-granddad died in his will he stated that his coin collection be split equally across his family. There was like 8 to 9 of us, and 3 potato sacks full of coins. So we all gathered round the table and each took 1 coin each until nothing was left. Among the coins was an iron cross, which was quite odd as the only person on that side of the family that went to war was his dad, and he served with the Anzacs in WW1. Not really the question but related. A lawyer once advised my 90-year-old aunt to adopt me, 24 at the time, to avoid paying inheritance tax. Now I'm not a big fan of tax avoidance, but her last name is Falcon in my language, which is immensely cooler than my current surname. Almost wold done it. Had a very attractive woman with terminal cancer try to get herself stuffed by a taxidermist and given to some rich guy that had been basically a sugar daddy to her for a few months. She said he would give me $1 million a week allowance as long as it was in an official will that he could see. I sent her to a lawyer who I knew that would do about anything for a buck because I didn't want to end up in the news when she died. That was 2 years ago. No clue what happened to her. My grandmother had her boobs done when she was in her 60s. Nothing really wrong with that, but when she died, she wanted an open casket with her boobs on display. Really, Nana? She passed away at 80 and got exactly what she asked for. Granddad had ended up sticking 2 strategically placed daisies on her boobs. So she got what she wanted, and so did Granddad. Rip Granny, love you.